Hey, welcome back to the channel and check out what we've got to work on now. That is my daughter's 2013-2014 Chevy Cruze with the infamous 1.4 turbo. Now, when my wife bought her Sonic, I was like, you can have a Sonic, but only with the 1.8. No turbos. What's my daughter do? Gets one with a turbo. And then buys an EcoBoost with 2 turbos. So, after owning a 300ZX, I'm not a big turbo fan. But the engine it is fun to drive. She's got a 6-speed stick in it. The problem is it's got the normal oil leak at the front of the engine, which is either your oil cooler, which is behind your turbo and your manifold, or it's some of the lines going to the turbo. So we're going to dive in and just change everything in one shot. All of the turbo oil lines, cooler lines, we'll put in a new oil cooler behind it. Everything, make it like brand new. Because the car's only got 105,000, but it's got some age on it, and turbos are hot, so it just cooks all the gaskets in there. So we're going to take it apart, fix it up. Now, they use this engine in the Sonics, the Cruzes, the Trax, lots of different stuff. So whatever we're doing here should be similar to what you'd find on the other stuff. And I'll go through step by step on taking everything apart, but in order to keep the video from lagging and from being really super long, if I'm just undoing some bolts, I'm not going to show you me undoing the bolts. I'm going to point and say, take these 3 bolts out, and then we'll move on. If there's something that you have to use some kind of trick to get to the bolts, or something like that that's different that you need to know, I will let you. But if it's just removing bolts, I'm just going to be like, bang, 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 take these out. So let's get right to it. Okay, the first thing to do on any kind of operation like this is undo the negative battery cable. There we go. I guess the proper name for these is the 1.4 Ecotec. Ecotec. Yeah, my wife's had a little deal on that. It rattled, so I threw it away. All right, we basically have to take off everything that you see in the picture there. Turbo, manifold. Now, if you are just replacing the oil cooler, I have heard that you can take out the catalytic converter down there and get to it from behind. But I mean, see this oil filter housing here, it's all made together. So I'm thinking one shot, just bite the bullet, take the turbo off, will be easier than trying to fish that thing out from behind. But your mileage may vary. First thing we're going to take off, just to get it out of the way, is the intake pipe here. Clamp, clamp. All right, we're off to a blazing start here. I managed to take off one hose without breaking anything. Next, we're going to move to the heat shield here. Bolt, bolt, bolt down there. And these are all E10 Torx. So if you don't have a set of these reverse torque sockets, you'll need to get them, because like, look at the valve cover, they use a lot of them for whatever stupid reason. Okay, heat shield came off no problem, which surprised me, but then I got to remembering that my daughter had been in here just recently. This line here, that oil feed line to the turbo, is new, so she would have had that cover off. So we got the cover out of the way. Next is the PCV line. Now this little thing, see how it's serrated right there? Same thing on the other side. You have to squeeze that together and then pull it off there. Now, I couldn't get it by hand, so I gently reached around with some channel locks, squeezed it, and pushed it back. No problem. Didn't even break it. And there is a small vacuum line on that nipple going to your blow-off valve, recirc valve, whatever you want to call it. Undo the clip, pull the hose off, and that comes up. And that sticks pretty much with your PCV line. And be careful with the PCV line. You see, we patched it back there because we've already broke that thing one time when we were working on our thermostat house. It's pretty crunchy. Next up, wastegate actuator. We need to get it out of the way so we can get some of the manifold bolts. So you have a hose here with a pinch clamp. Pull that off. There is a C-clip here. Just stick your screwdriver in there, pry it off. Be careful not to lose it. Then there is a bolt here and a bolt here, and that assembly should come out. And I had said those were bolts. They are actually 10mm nuts. So take a screwdriver, pry your arm off of the wastegate because it is spring-loaded in there. Pop that off, and then the assembly comes right out. I think I'll start working on the lower part of the exhaust next. There's your oxygen sensor. The blue cord comes up here to a connector. Now, this piece on the connector pulls out. Now, it was normally pushed in. You'll have to work it as you pull this piece out, pull that out a little bit at a time. It will come apart. So we've got the oxygen sensor pulled loose. I think if it'll unscrew there, I'm going to go ahead and take it out of the catalytic converter. That way I make sure not to break it. All right, put the 7/8 wrench on there, gave it a little whack with the mallet, and the oxygen sensor came out. And you don't necessarily have to pull the sensor out of there. It should come out leaving the sensor in the converter, but knowing me, I'll end up breaking it off. And since it came off fairly easy, why not? Next up, pinch bolt, not that. Pinch bolt right here that holds the catalytic converter onto the exhaust manifold. Well, no, it holds it onto the exhaust manifold and the turbine housing are all built in one piece. So it holds it onto the turbo. But we need to undo that, then we'll crawl underneath and undo the cap from the pipe. All right, that bolt had a 13mm head and it actually came out really easy. And that lets you spread the clamp so you can pull that apart. Now, this thing is making me nervous. Normally I would have broke off a half dozen things by this point. I think it's setting me up. We're gonna go underneath and see what happens there. All right, under the car, you got your exhaust pipe. This is the catalytic converter here. You have these, I can't see where my finger's going, 3 nuts to undo those two. And believe it or not, those 3 nuts have already broke free and they're coming off. I'll finish taking them off and then we can separate this pipe and we should be able to pull the catalytic converter out. Okay, since that's a slinky pipe, just pull it back and you can pivot it down out of the way. Okay, there's the end of the pipe. Go over to the side. There is a bolt or a stud and a nut. That's holding the side of the catalytic converter on. You need to take that off. Okay, I got down there feeling around. There is another mount that holds the catalytic converter on, and it's kind of behind the air outlet hose here off the turbo. So undo this clamp, we'll pull this hose off, and I'll probably just shove it somewhere out of the way. Okay, the cat is now loose. That second nut is like straight in under here. Can't see it, you can feel it. There's a stud and a nut. I'll show you when I get it off there. Feel around, you'll find it. Take that nut off. Now we should be able to pull the cat and get it out of there. Except that my wastegate got hung in the way. Here's the stud that's stuck down. This is the one that was behind the air outlet from the turbo that you couldn't see. Just had a nut on it. Take that off. Once those are off, you can spread the clamp on the top, and this thing will just slide right out the bottom. Okay, once you got the cat out of the way, you do have a pretty good view up to there. That part right there that has right in the center of the deal, that got the oil dripping off of it. That is the oil cooler that we're working to change. Right now, I'm gonna pull, see that bracket there? That's what held the cat on. I'm gonna take those 2 bolts, get that out of the way, because we're gonna take that tube that comes down off the bottom of the turbo. 2 bolts there, and then it clips into the oil pan. And we'll be putting a new one of those on. Okay, I undid the 2 bolts from that oil drain line on the bottom of the turbo, but I left the line sticking into the pan because it will be easier to get out once we pulled out this whole assembly. Right now, what we have left is this oil line that bolts on here and here. We'll take it out, but we've also got a coolant line coming in here that goes in the back of the turbo, and it also, the other end of the coolant line is down in there. If it'll focus, it's that banjo bolt there on the end of that hose. So you can pull that banjo bolt, let the coolant drain out there, and take off this little hose here, and that will free the turbo. What I'm going to do is her lower radiator hose, this big hose here, also needs changed because it's factory. So I'm going to disconnect it down there in that hole. It's got a spring clamp. We'll disconnect that, drain the coolant into a bucket. That way we won't have quite as big a mess when we undo the hoses up here. Now, if you're not changing this hose, I would just get a wrench on that banjo bolt down in there and let it drain out there. But I'm going to pull the hose because we're changing the hose. I think we're also changing this hose, so I may get it out of the way. We're pretty much changing everything while we're here in one shot. It's the best way to do it. Okay, what I'm going to use to take that hose off is this tool right here. You can get these at, I think I got this at AutoZone. There's the OEM part number. But any brand would work, I would assume. But this has this little job here. Those grab onto those ears of those compression spring clamps, and then as you tighten this down over here, it pulls that down and ratchets it and holds it. That way you can get the clamp and the hose off. Very handy for those devil spring clamps. So try to get that bottom one off, drain the coolant into a bucket, and then move on. The only other thing was there is a clamp coming from the intercooler charge pipe here. Just pull back on that and it will release that clamp. Well, this hose has been the worst part of the job so far. They have got that jammed so far down in the hole that I just took the stabby there, cut the hose off. See down in there they've got a little piece of the body sticking out that gets in the way of getting the tool in there for the clamp. So now that the hose is out of the way, I'm going to try to get that clamp off there. Well, that hose has definitely, without a doubt, been the most annoying thing so far. Once I finally got the tool in there and spread the clamp, you couldn't get the tool and the clamp out because it hit that little flange on the body. So I had to reach in and pull the little chunk of hose out, and then I could get the clamp off. Pain in the ass. Because it's just the way it's aimed, and you can't move it until you have it spread. Annoying. Very annoying. Okay, we're going to pull out this little oil line here next. Right there is an E10 that holds that flange in. That just pulls straight out. And then you got a T45 that takes this banjo bolt out. And then that line will slide right out. Okay, there's the line. It's got some O-rings in it. Pulls up. Banjo bolt. 2 washers. And that comes out and then it just slides right out. Now, if you're worried about dropping anything in them holes, stick a rag in there like that. I try to keep real close track to make sure I don't drop anything down in the intake. It's always a good plan. But if you're worried about it, stick some plugs or a rag in the holes. Next up is this lower cooling hose. Clamp here, down right here. There is an E10 hold down bolt. So you take that bolt out, take that clamp off, slide that hose off, and then the rest of it will stay on the turbo as you pull it out. Okay, we got the bolt out of the bracket, the hose is off. So right now we need to take out all the manifold bolts. Each runner has like 2 bolts, top and bottom. Just got to feel around and find them. Take all of them out, and I have all of them broke free. They all came loose, which is amazing. But pull all of them out, and then we should be able to slide the turbo out. Turbo and the manifold. All right, I've got them all out. Some of them brought the stud out with the nut. Well, I'd say I've got them all out except for one down in that hole. That's the only one I couldn't get the little 1/4 inch air ratchet on. And I can get that with an end wrench. But these lifting brackets, I'm taking them off. And they're 2 E12 bolts. Not hard to get out. Okay, there's all the manifold fasteners. And if I didn't say it before, those are 10 millimeter. Well, now I can say that one pulled the stud out with it. Not a problem. Okay, I pulled that out a little bit. I went under and finished undoing the banjo fitting line. I did it at the turbo, so the banjo bolt is still in there. Now this thing should be ready, I think. Oh, no, got one more wire over here. Okay, have that fitting right there on that solenoid. You just squeeze this wire piece in and push that down. That comes off. And then this is held on with a little zip tie down there. We'll cut it. Okay, now I think it's ready to come out. Oh, it is. All right, and that gets us down to the leaky part right there. Now that's got an O-ring in that right there. She's got a whole new line going over to the thermostat housing. Well, she got all new lines. We'll be replacing this hose here because it's factory GM. The metal pipe coming off of it is part of the housing because the oil cooler, the oil filter, all of that is built together. There's a bracket down there holding that pipe in, and then 3 bolts holding that whole mess onto the engine. And then right there under that heat blanket is the oil pressure sensor. We'll need to disconnect it. Right now I'm going to disconnect this hose here, this hose here, and then take this bolt out here that holds this hose, this pipe on. Okay, I got the 2 hoses undone, the screw out below, slid the little heat blanket around. This pops loose, clip on the back, just push that out, pull the clip out. Now I think I'm going to go ahead and take the oil pressure sensor out of there to make sure I don't bust it while I take the rest of the assembly out. I would imagine that oil pressure switch is a metric size, but hey, guess what? 15/16 fit just perfect. Broke that free. We'll unscrew it just so I don't break it. I'm kind of destructive. Now we have 3 E12s to move. Here, here, and here. And then I think the whole unit will come off. Okay, we are ready to get this thing out of here. Now there is a spout that goes into the engine block. It's got an O-ring on it, so you kind of got to wiggle and pry to get this to come out of there. There we go. So that gets the front of the engine. We need to do a bunch of cleanup. Got a little oil down there. So I was looking through the box of parts my daughter has put together. We're going to change this line up here that goes to the coolant tank. But I'm like, I want to change this plastic piece here, because I figured that'll be the next thing to break. I had to pick her up. I had to drive about 50 miles the other night to pick her up because the thermostat housing, they're kind of spring loaded, and it popped and it started puking coolant out of it. So she's put a new thermostat housing on it. So we will reuse that. But like I said, it's got 100,000, a little over 100,000 miles on it. So we're going to go ahead and put a water pump in it while we're here. This hose is new, so we'll keep it. She's put all new heater hoses in the back. So basically that lower hose, the oil cooler, turbo lines, and this thing is going to be like new. But I'm hungry. It's time for lunch. Need to go to AutoZone, pick up one of these plastic water trees or whatever you want to call it. Kind of looks like a tree. All right, we'll be back. Okay, I did not get back to work on this yesterday after going and picking up that water outlet and having lunch. So we're going to hit it now. I think before I put anything back on the front of the engine, I'm going to go ahead and change that water outlet. And my daughter has a new hose for the top there that goes to the coolant tank. So right down in there, we're going to take that screw loose, or that clamp loose, move this charge pipe out of the way so we got better access to the water outlet. All right, the pipe's out of the way. Get this hose undone. Pull that clip out and the hose will come out. Now, there is a sensor here. Unclip, undo it, and then you have a hose clamp right there. Undo that and push that off the back. And she has already put new hoses on there, so we don't need to replace it. But if you're doing everything, I'd replace all those coolant hoses there in the back. Go to the heater core, go to the bottom of the coolant tank. Just get them all in one shot. Okay, that gets you down to 3 E10 bolts. It's kind of hard to point at them, but they're around that flange where it bolts to the engine. So pull those out. There you see 2 of them there in the camera, one on the bottom. Pull those out and that water outlet will come off. And definitely a good idea to replace this. They get brittle just like any other heat cycled old plastic. Gets brittle and breaks. The flange will warp. Uses a seal like this to go to the block. They get to where they don't seal. They get hard, although this one's still pretty pliable. A lot of times it's the flange that gets warped or they crack. So definitely replace this. Okay, here's the new outlet. It has the sensor built in. The bolts are captive, so they're already in there. It's got the gasket right there, so all I had to do was clean off the end of the head really good, shine it up, blew the bolts out, bolt holes out with some compressed air. We're ready to bolt it on there. I got the outlet on there, everything's all, bolts are snuck down. Take them to 71 inch-pounds. Now I'm good to slide the hose back on the back, plug in the sensor, and then we can move to the hose there on top. It's always good to finally start putting new parts back on in a project like this. Okay, who engineered this? Somebody needs kicked in the southern regions. You know, I put that on there. When we took the hose off a while ago, we pulled this clip, pulled this assembly out. Well, when I was putting this new outlet on there, I was like, why in the heck has that got that already in there? Then I get the hose out, and it's a separate deal. There's the old hose. There's the adapter that's in the water outlet, and then this piece snaps on top of that with another O-ring there. So you got an O-ring there. You got an O-ring down here on the bottom. Why? Why not make that one piece? Frickin' idiots. All right, so all we got to do is snap this into there and put the hose on the back there. Well, so much for just sliding that on there. That is as far as I can get that pushed on there. And you can see the clips don't engage. So I had to pull this piece out of the water outlet. And I'm going to have to modify it a little bit or use the original one, which I don't want to use the original one because it's old plastic. But this hose is a brand new GM one. And this water outlet's a Dorman, or not a Dorman, and this water outlet's a Duralast. And they just don't quite fit. So what's blocking it's this top edge sticking up. So I'm going to take that over to the belt sander and sand that down just enough to get that to slide on there to where it'll clip. And that's all it took. Just took a little off the top, clipped right together like it should have. Just make sure if you have to do something like that to chamfer the end of the hole where you sanded it to make sure it doesn't hurt the O-ring when it slides together. And then just feed it back in there, snap it into place. Now it's retained. Now we're down to just hooking the hose up back there. Okay, while we're buttoning up the water outlet, I'm going to go ahead and put the lower radiator hose in. And yes, I am reusing the devil clamps. I call them devil clamps because sometimes they can be seriously evil. But they do serve a good purpose. They are a constant tension clamp. If you use like a worm drive clamp, they're a fixed tension. Whatever you set it at, that's as tight as they get. And the problem is that in cold weather, the hose shrinks, the radiator outlet shrinks, everything shrinks up in the cold. The clamp does not, or does not at the same rate at the rest of it, and you can end up with a leak. These, as the plastic contracts, the hose contracts, they just go ahead and squeeze tighter. So they do have a good purpose, even though they're a pain. The main problem on this was that lower clamp, and that was just because they had the ears aimed out toward the side of the car, and you couldn't get to it. As long as you put the ears on the inside, piece of cake. So we're going to get that hose put on, then we'll move on probably to the water pump. Next up, I want to tackle the water pump, get that out of the way. So we'll get the air box removed. There's a little clip here. Pull the red piece out. Push the tab underneath. That disconnects your mass airflow sensor. There's a small hose down here. Just pulls out of the air box. And then I think the air box is just snapped in there. There you go. Air box is out. And that, as soon as we get the motor mount out of the way, you've got a lot of access in here. Don't tell my daughter, even though she'll see this video, that I'm really kind of liking her car. So we'll need to take the serpentine belt off. We'll need to jack up, just support the engine over here from underneath. And then we can take this assembly out, and we're pretty much right into the water pump. Okay, we've got a hydraulic jack and a wooden block under the oil pan there just to support it while we take the engine mount out. Take out these 3 bolts, separate the engine from the mount here. Okay, these 3 are 15 millimeter. Engine moved down just a touch, less than 1/4 of an inch, so that's good. Be able to take these 2 and this one out and just get that whole assembly out of there. Oh yeah, lots of room. There we go. Oh yeah, now we have full access to the front of the engine. Okay, you had 3 E12s holding the water pump pulley on. I went ahead and broke those free. Now, you got an E14 down here on your idler pulley. Push it clockwise, and that takes the tension off your belt. You can pull your belt off. And move your belt out of the way. Just pulling these 3 bolts out here on the pulley. Pulley is off. That gains us access to the water pump. That rear hose there is part of the heater hose lines. It has already been replaced. She's replaced it, so I'm just going to undo it. We'll put it right back on. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, she put a new thermostat housing and the hose on there. So we'll just undo the 3 bolts on the thermostat housing. Just move it out of the way. And then there's just a bunch of bolts holding the water pump to the block. They look like E10s. So we'll pop all those out. Water pump should come off. All right, the water pump is off. Now, there are 10 bolts in 3 different lengths. So make sure you've got 10 bolts out of it. Some of them are kind of hard to see. But make sure you got all 10 out before you break out the pry bar or start whacking on it with a hammer and break something. I thought I was going to have to get a new tensioner, but pulled it off there, basically 2 bolts, one there, tensioner comes off, cleaned everything up. It's a good idea to pull that off anyway, because you can clean behind it and get a lot more stuff off the front of the engine. But once I got it all cleaned up, I think it was just some debris around the pulley making noise, because it is nice and smooth. Of course, if it did need a bearing, it's only a 6203 bearing, but they have it sandwiched between these 2 sheet metal pulley deals, and you can't change it readily. I'm sure that minimized manufacturing costs and maximized parts replacement. But yeah, this whole assembly is like $115 at the local auto parts. So we're going to run with it as is because it feels just fine. New water pump's ready to go. New gasket. I'm not going to put any sealer on it. It's a metal core gasket. It should seal up just fine by itself. Front of the engine is way cleaner than it was before. Water pump surface is spotless, so now just got to bolt that on and torque it down. Okay, the water pump's on there. The way I got that in there was I stuck a couple of the short bolts through the water pump, hung the gasket on that, slipped it in there, got those started, then went ahead and put the rest of them in. Now I need to go through and torque everything to 8 foot-pounds, or I would recommend 96 inch-pounds. It's the same amount. I would just use an inch-pound torque wrench. So 96 inch-pounds, we'll go around and make sure you get all 10 of them. Okay, water pump pulleys back on. Those torqued to 16 foot-pounds. Drop the belt back in there. Put the thermostat housing back on the water pump. Those bolts are 71 inch-pounds. And even though that water pump or that thermostat housing hasn't been on there but a few weeks, the gasket was still really flat, the rubber gasket that goes in there. And there was a new one that came with the water pump, so we put that in. So that's torqued down. I think we're ready to put the engine mounts back in. Do a little cleanup right there. Engine side mount is in. Those get torqued to 46 foot-pounds. Front end is buttoned back up. These 46, book value on the ones that go to the body are 50. 46 seemed like plenty, so I just did 46 on all of them. Got the jack out from underneath. Don't think the air box will be in the way of anything we're doing on the front, so I'm going to go ahead and put it in. Just snap it in place, hook up this line, hook up your mass airflow sensor, and that'll be done. Air box is in. Now we're ready to get back to where we left off on the front. Now, pretty nasty in there from where everything's leaked. I'm going to do some scrubbing, make sure not to get debris in your holes there. I'll put something over that oil tube so nothing drips down in the pan. I'll just leave that on there till I get it cleaned, and then we'll start putting the new parts on. Everything's looking good there. Make sure that surface is clean. Make sure the bolt holes don't have fluid in them. Blew those out with compressed air. Now that lower fitting where the spigot goes, there's oil keeps draining into it, but it is clean. So I'm going to get ready and put the oil cooler back on there. The oil cooler's got an O-ring here. We'll put some silicone grease on it. Got a new seal here. Up in that hole there is a little plastic piece. Do not take that out. It pokes out of this hole here where your oil line goes. Where your oil line goes in. The end of the oil line fits down in that plastic, pushes it back, and that's an anti-drain back valve. So don't take it out. And we're ready to set this down in there. Now, just like coming out, you got to kind of wiggle it to get it down in there. Alright, the flange is bottomed out now. So we got the 3 bolts. We have to turn that just a little. There, it started to screw in. Get the other 2 started. I think those 3 are snug down. Well, another thing you want to do is to make sure there is a filter in that housing. There should be, but I would double check. I was going to do that on the workbench, but the cap was on so tight I couldn't get it broke free. But filter was in there, so we'll put the cap back on and move on. Okay, the next line I want to tackle is this coolant line here that hooks on with the banjo bolt. We'll aim the end of it right there even with the oil drain pipe. We'll get that bolted in place so we can just fasten it to the back of the turbo when we get it set in there. Okay, there's the old line off. The new line comes like this. It's got a new banjo bolt here, and this fitting slides on here and clips. So we'll go ahead and get that clipped in place and then bolt this to the engine. Okay, that line went on there nicely. You can move it however you need it to hook it up to the turbo. I set this, make sure sealing ring on each side of the banjo bolt. The sealing ring that goes here, I set it up on top of the engine because it kept trying to fall off. Just got to make sure to put that in when we screw it to the turbo. The next thing, I'm going to pull out this drain. And that's why you get a new drain, because the factory one is plastic and breaks. Okay. Wiggled it a bunch, wouldn't come out. Broke it a few more times. Finally grabbed it with a pair of pliers and pulled it up out of there. But yeah, that definitely needs replaced. It's total junk. Okay, here's the new metal drain line. The lines and all were a kit from Dorman. So this should hold up a lot better. Just stick that in the hole till the bottom's out. Okay, the drain line's in. It's got a new gasket that's fastened onto the top of it here, so it's good to go. Now we'll put in the coolant line from there over to the filler neck, or the thermostat housing. Okay, here's the new hose. It's a new GM hose. Comes with the pipe, O-ring, everything you need. Just reuse the one clamp off the old hose there. If you're not replacing this, or you're just replacing this hose and not the pipe, you'll need a new O-ring, and that's I think you can only get that from GM. Because I've seen some guys try to find an O-ring that would fit it, didn't have any luck, but GM will sell you the O-ring, or you can just get the whole pipe. Grease that up a little bit, slip that in, hose on the thermostat housing, and then there's one bolt on the block that holds it all in place. That's on there looking good. Just make sure not to forget your little bolt on the clamp underneath. Otherwise, that'll pressurize and probably spit it right out of the oil cooler and you'll have a mess. Got the turbo on the workbench. Went and hit the exhaust flanges with the Scotch-Brite wheel. We need to put on this coolant hose here. Just unscrew it there. We'll position this new one in the same spot. We'll be putting the bottom one on when we get it hung on the car. I need to get this old gasket for the oil drain off there, and then it should be about ready to install. Hey, if you've ever wondered how these turbos work, these two ports are for your coolant. Coolant just goes in one, out the other, circulates around the center of the housing there to keep it cool. You have pressurized oil coming in the top fitting, and then it goes through this big fitting on the bottom through that large pipe. And the reason they do that is you can't have any pressure on that oil as it exits the turbo, because if it does, it'll end up pushing past the seal, go past your turbine wheel, and end up in your exhaust flow, and you'll end up with a smoky turbo. Because there's basically just a little tiny, looks like a piston ring on the seal in there that rides on the housing, and that's what holds the oil in. So it's kind of a balancing act between oil pressure and exhaust pressure to hold that oil in the turbo. So you don't want to have pressure in this cavity. The oil comes in, lubricates the journal bearings, because I assume this is a journal bearing turbo. Some of the higher end turbos have ball bearings, so this will probably be a journal bearing. And it just lubricates the bearings, runs out the bottom back to the oil pan. New pipes on there. Since it has the fitting there that swivels, we shouldn't have any trouble getting it aligned. I was looking here on the turbine end. So your exhaust gases come through, come out your manifold. They come around, spin through, come through here toward your exhaust. And as they come through, they spin this turbine wheel, so the same shaft as your compressor wheel on the other side that compresses your intake air that gives you the power. Now, Your engine will be set up to only put out so much boost, and when it gets up to a certain, pressure on the intake side, it has to do something to regulate it. So that's why you have this valve here, your wastegate. So once you get to the proper pressure on your intake side and you don't want it spinning any faster, the wastegate actuator will start opening this valve, and that lets exhaust gases bypass the turbine wheel and come out here. One reason I was showing you this is because we got some cracks. Got a crack right there on top and a smaller one down at the bottom. Now, from my understanding on these, that's not especially unusual. And it's not a deal breaker either. So I'm not going to change it just because that. I mean, these things get hot. And it's not cracked through. And to change it, you're basically changing either the whole turbo or at least the whole exhaust manifold, since they're all built together. But it's not hard to get the turbo off on these. I don't think it'll be a problem, so we're just gonna run with it. I think we're ready to hang the turbo. Put some NICs on all the studs there. Got a new gasket. It's a Felpro gasket. The original one was a multi-layer steel. This is it's got a steel core with the adhesive sides on it. Those seal really well, so that should work good. Hang the turbo on there and start fastening the rest of the stuff up. All the bolts are torqued in. They go to 132 inch-pounds. So just start in the middle, work up and down, work your way out both directions. I'd go over it a couple of times. Make sure the gasket compresses and you get the right finished torque. The only one I couldn't get the torque wrench on was that one in the very corner. Just guessed on it. Just don't break it off. Oh, and don't forget your two up top that hold your heat shield. Next, I fastened the water line on there with a new clamp because I broke the old one. Right there is a screw that holds that on. Make sure to put that in and then put in your pipe here. Do not put this pipe in first because then you can't get to your bolt, which I may or may not have done. Now, we'll put this pipe in. It just slides around the back of the manifold. Got the banjo bolt on one end. Make sure you got gaskets on both sides, and this shoves down into the oil cooler. Okay, the pressure oil line is on. You've got the little hold down bolt there. Tighten the banjo. I don't know what the torque spec was for the banjo. I don't have a shop manual for this car, so I've just been finding torque specs as I went along. And I didn't look that one up. Tight enough that it doesn't leak. Not tight enough you break it off. Next, should be able to put in the oil pressure switch. Sensor screwed in there. Do not over tighten it. Be easy to break off. Put your wire back on if you've still got a little heat shield. Bring it around, cover it up. Now I think we should go underneath and tighten up the drain and the other coolant line. All right up here, we're tightening that coolant line down. Don't forget the sealing washer, the one I laid up on the valve cover earlier. All right, that took a little doing, but I finally got that metal line twisted around or I could bolt it back onto the bottom of the turbo. Okay, before we fit the cat in there, we got to bolt this back to the block because that's what fastens the cat in place. Before I do that, I'm going to do a little more cleaning on the front of the engine. The oil pan is just covered in crap, so we'll clean it off a little bit. I know it doesn't make much difference in the long run, but just a little bit of scrubbing made that whole area look a lot better. Now I'll put that cat bracket on. Well, that was entertaining. Getting that cat up in there and getting it mounted to that turbo with that V-band clamp was a pain. Lots of wiggling and cussing and everything till I finally got it to mate together. Just tighten your clamp and then the two bolts that hold it to the bracket. Now I'm going back under and putting the exhaust flange. I'm not taking the camera because it's just the 3 nuts and a new gasket. Putting the pipe onto the cat. We are getting close-ish. Got a few more things to button up here. I've got the oil drain. I was going to change it. Should have drained it, when it was hot, but I didn't think about it. Right now we're going to put the new hose from here to here. That's easy. Okay, we've got the coolant line hooked on there. Put the oxygen sensor back in, hooked it up there. Got the line down there for the recirc valve hooked back up. Put the wire connector back on the solenoid. So now I think it's, oh, and snap the PCV line back in. So now it's time to put the wastegate actuator back on. Wastegate was just a matter of slipping it into place, put the two nuts on, pull the rod out to where it'll go on the wastegate arm, put the clip back on, hose and clamp right here to actuate it. Heat shields on, just 3 bolts, no problem. I went ahead and put the engine hanger brackets back on. I was originally just going to throw them in the parts box and save them for later. Then it occurred to me, this ain't my car. So put them back on. Now we're ready for the air intake pipe. Charge pipe's on. Need to fill it full of oil and coolant and hook the battery up. We should be able to give it a start. So far so good. Running nicely, not throwing fluids out the bottom. I don't think I'll take it out and give it a little run. Coolant level's still good. Well, I fired it up and it idled good. Went to go and not so much. Remember the hose down there that goes from the turbo to the intercooler that I took off and tucked over to the side? Yeah, you guessed it. It was still tucked over to the side. So I bet it'll work better now. Well, I got it. It's amazing how much better it runs when the whole intake system's fastened together. I got one more thing to show you and then we'll finish this video. All right, I just said there was one more thing I wanted to show you. Well, that has actually turned into 2 things. But here was the first thing I wanted to show you. Now, we replaced this whole unit with a new one. Everything brand new, ready to go. But if you wanted to save a few bucks, you can rebuild these. You take the oil cooler part off of the housing. There is a big gasket here, and this is one that will leak and end up with you having coolant in your oil or oil in your coolant. But you can replace that gasket. Now, it's still, you'll have some plastic parts on the inside that don't get replaced if you do that, but I'm not sure how prone they are to breaking. This pipe that goes in right here also has an O-ring that you can replace. The pipe that went in here is replaceable, that O-ring. I think you may, I don't know if that comes in the kits, but you can get that from GM. Then the gasket there. And the main gasket where it goes on the side of the engine block. So you can replace all these, but then you have to clean all this. Like I said, you're not replacing every plastic part in it, but you are replacing the stuff that would be prone to leak, and it will save you some money. Because I think this thing was like $190 for Rock Auto. And then bought an exhaust gasket and the flange gasket for the pipe. I think you can get, I saw a kit on O'Reilly's for like $120 that had all the gaskets for this, plus the exhaust manifold gasket and the flange gasket. So you could save a little bit of money by doing a little bit more work. But I can definitely see why a professional mechanic would just grab a whole new unit and stick it on there. Now, the second thing I want, if you rewind the video to where I said I had one more thing to show you, I was showing you the instrument cluster. You can see that the temperature gauge is right in the middle of its range, like it should be. Less than a quarter of a mile after I pulled out from that stop sign, this thing lost its crap. Temperature gauge pegged out, said pull over, or, oh, it said go to idle speed, overheat. I pull over, steam's coming out of the tank like crazy, coolant bubbling everywhere, and I'm like, what the crap just happened? Because I'd run like 10 miles before that, and it was perfect. Well, I ended up calling my son. He came out, we let it cool down, put some coolant in it, drove it the 3 or 4 miles back home, stopped it, and we're still had coolant boiling over in the overflow tank. So at that point, I just thought I hadn't got it filled back up good enough. Quit for the evening. Well, today I went out, made sure it was full. You know, everything was perfectly cooled down, made sure the tank was full, took it out for a drive, had made it like 10 miles. The temperature gauge was right on the money like it should be. And I pull over just to check things, and same deal, just boiling over like crazy in the tank. And what it was was just the cap right there. See, that cap maintains pressure of up to 20 psi in the cooling system, and that makes your boiling point over your normal 212 degrees. And I think the cap just took a crap. You know, all of a sudden right there when I finished that video, because it just all of a sudden blew out. So put a new cap on it. I've drove it 20 miles since then. Everything's perfect. No more boiling in the tank. You know, everything's just great. Because when you look on the back of an antifreeze container, it'll say like a 50-50 mix of coolant is good to like 260 degrees. But then in little letters down below, it says with a properly functioning pressure cap of 15 psi. So if you lose the pressure in the system, your boiling point goes way, way down. And, you know, these cars will run 220 just normal. So without the pressure cap, it boils over. So it's all good now. Hopefully I won't see this car for a while, at least not having to work on it. And hope that helps you out, and we'll catch you on the next video. Thanks for watching.